The bucket slipped from Beatrice Fletcher's trembling fingers and hit the dirt with a hollow thud, water sloshing across the parched earth as her hands refused to obey her mind's desperate commands. She stared at them in the fading daylight, those traitors attached to her wrists, shaking so violently she could barely recognize them as her own. 3 days, she had been hauling water from the creek to the horses, mending fences her father had left broken, chopping wood until blisters formed and burst and formed again. 3 days since the fever took her father and left her alone on this failing ranch outside Hecla, Montana, in the summer of 1882, with nothing but debts and the ghost of his voice telling her to keep fighting. "Madam, that bucket's got more holes in it than a gambler's promise." Beatrice whirled around, her exhausted body swaying dangerously. A man stood 10 feet away, tall and weathered like the mountains that ringed the valley. His hat cast shadows across a face that looked carved from the same granite, angular and strong, with eyes the color of storm clouds. Dust covered his clothes, and a worn saddlebag hung over one broad shoulder. "I can manage," she said, though her voice cracked on the words. She bent to retrieve the bucket, but her hands were shaking so badly she could not grip the handle. "Does not look much like managing to me." He stepped forward, boots crunching on the dry ground. "Name's Nathan Stone. Was riding through when I saw your fence line down on the south pasture. Came to see if you needed help." "I don't need charity." Beatrice straightened, swaying again. The world tilted sideways, and she would have fallen if Nathan had not moved with surprising speed, catching her elbow with a firm but gentle grip. "Not offering charity. Offering work." His voice was low, steady as bedrock. "Looks like you could use a hand, and I could use a place to rest my horse for the night. Fair trade." Beatrice wanted to refuse. Pride burned hot in her chest, the same stubborn pride her father had carried until it killed him, working himself to death rather than admit he could not manage alone. But her hands would not stop shaking, and she could barely stand, and the fence still needed mending before the horses wandered onto the neighbor's property. "Just for tonight," she whispered. Nathan nodded once, released her arm, and retrieved the bucket. His hands were steady, scarred from years of hard work, and he examined the bucket with a critical eye. "This needs patching before it's any use. You got tools in the barn?" Yes, but he was already walking toward the weathered structure, moving with the efficient grace of a man who had spent his life working. Beatrice followed on unsteady legs, watching as he set down his saddlebag and began examining her father's tools. He worked in silence, selecting what he needed, and within minutes he had positioned the bucket and begun repairs. "You should sit," he said without looking up. "No sense in standing when your legs are about to give out." Beatrice sank onto a hay bale, relief flooding through her weary body. "How did you know?" "Know what?" "That I needed help." Nathan glanced up, and something flickered in those gray eyes. "Saw it in your hands. My sister used to get that way back when we were trying to keep our place running after our parents died. She'd work until she dropped, hands shaking so bad she could not hold a cup of coffee. Stubborn as a mule, just like you." "What happened to her?" "She married a rancher up in Helena. Has 3 kids now, happy as can be." He returned to his work, his movements precise and practiced. "Learned her lesson about asking for help before she worked herself into an early grave." The words stung because they were true. Beatrice looked down at her trembling hands, at the broken blisters and dirt embedded under her fingernails. "My father died 3 days ago. Fever. There's no one else." Nathan's hands stilled for just a moment, then continued their work. "I'm sorry for your loss." He left debts. "The bank's going to take the ranch if I can't make the payments. I have 30 days. The words tumbled out, exhaustion loosening her tongue. I have 12 horses to sell at the market in Virginia City, but I can't get them there alone, and I can't afford to hire help. Virginia City's a week's drive, maybe 10 days with a herd that size. Nathan set down his tools, the bucket now watertight. That's rough country to cross alone. I don't have a choice. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You do now, I'll take you. Beatrice's head snapped up. What? No, I could not possibly. You saved me the trouble of finding work. I was headed west anyway, no particular destination in mind. He stood, brushing dust from his pants. We leave in 2 days, gives you time to rest and me time to get your fences mended and your stock sorted. In exchange, you feed me and give me a place to sleep. When we get to Virginia City and you sell your horses, you pay me a fair wage for the drive. Deal. She should refuse. Should tell this stranger to ride on and leave her to manage her own troubles. But her hands were still shaking and the fences were still broken, and somewhere deep in her chest, a tiny flame of hope flickered to life. Deal, she whispered. Nathan extended his hand. Beatrice placed her trembling palm in his, and his grip was warm and steady and strong. For the first time in 3 days, she felt like she might survive. That night, Nathan slept in the barn while Beatrice collapsed into her bed fully clothed, too exhausted to even remove her boots. She woke to the sound of hammering, early morning light filtering through her window. Stumbling outside, she found Nathan already at work on the south fence, his shirt damp with sweat despite the cool dawn air. You should have woken me, she called. You needed the sleep more than I needed help. He drove another nail home with 3 efficient strikes. There's coffee on the stove in the barn, made it an hour ago. Beatrice found the tin pot sitting on a makeshift stove, still warm. The coffee was strong and bitter, exactly what she needed. She poured a second cup and carried it out to Nathan, who accepted it with a nod of thanks. They worked together through the morning, Beatrice's hands still shaky but improved after a night's rest. Nathan moved through the ranch like he had been born to it, identifying problems her father had been too sick or too stubborn to address. A loose board in the stable door, a section of roof that would leak come the first rain, the water trough that needed cleaning. Your father was a good man, Nathan said as they worked side by side mucking out the stalls. You can tell by how he cared for his animals, but he was carrying too much alone. He did not want to appear weak. Beatrice leaned on her pitchfork, watching dust motes dance in the shaft of sunlight. Said a man takes care of his own. A man also knows when to ask for help. There's no shame in it. Nathan's voice was gentle but firm. My father thought the same way, worked himself sick trying to prove he could do it all. By the time he admitted he needed help, it was too late. Is that why you travel alone now? Partly. After my sister married, I hired out to different ranches, moved around. Guess I never found a place that felt like home. He resumed working, his movements steady and rhythmic. But I know good land when I see it. This place has potential if you can hold on to it. 30 days, Beatrice repeated. That's all I have. Then we better make them count. They fell into an easy rhythm over the next 2 days. Nathan proved to be a man of few words but decisive action. He sorted through the 12 horses Beatrice planned to sell, evaluating each with a practiced eye. He identified the strongest for the drive and spent hours working with a particularly skittish mare, his patience endless. Beatrice watched him with the horses, noting how his voice dropped to a low murmur, how his movements were slow and deliberate. The skittish mare, who had shied from her father's approach for months, began to calm under Nathan's steady presence. You have a gift, she said on the second evening as they sat on the porch, eating the simple dinner she had prepared. Nathan shrugged. Just patience. Horses respond to calm. If you're anxious, they're anxious. If you're steady, they steady down. Is that how you see people too? He looked at her then, really looked, and Beatrice felt heat rise in her cheeks. Some people, maybe. The good ones. The air between them felt charged, heavy with something unspoken. Beatrice cleared her throat and looked away, focusing on the purple twilight settling over the mountains. We should leave at dawn. Agreed. It's a long drive and we want to avoid the worst of the summer heat. Nathan stood, collecting their plates. You did good work today. Your hands were steadier, because you took half the load. Beatrice followed him inside, watching as he efficiently cleaned their dishes. I can't thank you enough, Nathan. Thank me when we get those horses to market and your ranch is secure. But he smiled as he said it, a rare expression that transformed his stern face into something warmer. They departed Hecla as the sun broke over the eastern ridges, turning the sky gold and pink. 12 horses moved ahead of them in a loose herd, with Nathan riding point and Beatrice bringing up the rear. The morning was cool and clear, perfect weather for driving stock. The first day passed without incident. They covered good ground, following the old freight road that wound through the valleys. Nathan called rest stops with the precision of someone who knew exactly how far to push animals without exhausting them. At midday, they watered the herd at a creek and ate cold biscuits in the shade. You handle yourself well, Nathan said, watching as Beatrice checked each horse's hooves for stones. Most women I know would not have lasted this long alone. Most women you know probably had choices. Beatrice moved to the next horse, running her hands down its legs with practiced efficiency. I don't have the luxury of giving up. It's not about luxury, it's about strength. He stood and walked over to where she crouched. You have it in abundance, Beatrice Fletcher. The way he said her name, low and respectful, sent warmth spreading through her chest. She looked up at him, squinting against the bright sky. You barely know me. I know enough. Know you worked 3 days straight without stopping. Know you'd rather die than lose your father's ranch. Know you're brave enough to trust a stranger because you understood when pride becomes foolish. He extended his hand, helping her to her feet. That tells me everything I need to know. His hand lingered in hers a moment longer than necessary, calloused palm warm against her skin. Beatrice's breath caught, and she saw something flicker in Nathan's eyes, there and gone like summer lightning. We should keep moving, she said softly. Yes, Nathan agreed, but he did not release her hand immediately. When he finally did, the air felt cooler without his touch. They made camp that night in a sheltered valley, the horses picketed nearby. Nathan built a fire while Beatrice prepared dinner from their supplies, beans and bacon and coffee strong enough to strip paint. They ate in comfortable silence, the crackle of flames and the soft sounds of the horses the only noise. Tell me about your ranch, Nathan said eventually. Before your father got sick. Beatrice stared into the fire, memories washing over her. It was good, small but profitable. We bred horses, sold them to the army and to ranchers. My mother died when I was 15, so it was just father and me for the last 7 years. He taught me everything, how to break horses, how to read the land, how to survive. Her voice caught. Just not how to let him go. You never learned that part, not really. Nathan poked at the fire with a stick. You just learn to carry it. You still miss your parents every day, but the hurt dulls over time, becomes something you can live with. He looked across the flames at her. You'll survive this, Beatrice. You're stronger than you know. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. The admission came out in a rush. What if I can't sell the horses for enough? What if I lose everything? What if I'm not enough? Nathan set down his stick and moved around the fire, settling beside her on the log. His shoulder pressed against hers, solid and warm. Then you start over. Build something new, but you won't be doing it alone. Won't I? After Virginia City, you'll move on to wherever you're going next. Maybe. His voice was quiet. or maybe I'll find a reason to stay." Beatrice turned to look at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. In the firelight, his face was all plains and shadows, his gray eyes dark and intent on hers. What kind of reason? The kind that makes a place feel like home. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The kind that makes a man think about putting down roots instead of drifting. "Nathan," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and questioning. Beatrice melted into the kiss, her hands coming up to grip his shirt. He tasted like coffee and smoke, and when he pulled back, she was breathless. "I should not have done that," he said, but his hand still cupped her cheek. "We have a business arrangement." "Yes," Beatrice agreed. "You probably should not have." "Are you angry?" she smiled, surprising herself. "No, I'm not angry," Nathan's expression softened. "Good, because I've been wanting to do that since I caught you when you nearly fainted." That was only 2 days ago, 2 very long days. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Beatrice felt the world narrow to just this moment, this man, this impossible hope blooming in her chest. They drew apart reluctantly, the fire burning low between them. Nathan stood and extended his hand. "We should sleep. Long day tomorrow." Beatrice let him pull her to her feet, but she did not release his hand. "Thank you for everything. Thank me in Virginia City." But he squeezed her fingers before letting go, and when they bedded down on opposite sides of the fire, Beatrice fell asleep with a smile on her face. The next 4 days passed in a blur of dust and distance. They drove the horses hard but fairly, stopping regularly for water and rest. The terrain grew rougher as they climbed into the hills, the road narrowing to little more than a trail in places. On the 4th day, trouble found them. 3 men materialized from the rocks ahead, rifles in hand and mean looks on their sun-scorched faces. Nathan raised his hand, signaling Beatrice to stop the herd. "Nice horses you got there," the largest man called out. He had a scar running down his cheek and tobacco-stained teeth. "Shame to see a lady and 1 cowboy trying to handle them alone." "We're managing fine," Nathan said evenly. His hand rested casually on his thigh near his revolver. "We don't want trouble. No trouble at all." The scarred man grinned. "Just thinking those horses would fetch a fine price in butt, save you the trip to Virginia City. The horses are not for sale." Beatrice urged her mount forward, drawing alongside Nathan. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "We're taking them to market ourselves." "That's so." A second man, thin as a rail with a patchy beard, spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Don't seem right, a woman giving orders. Maybe we should teach her some manners." Nathan's entire demeanor changed. The easygoing cowboy vanished, replaced by something hard and dangerous. "You'll ride on now. All 3 of you, and you'll do it before I decide you're more threat than nuisance." The scarred man laughed. 3 against 1, I like those odds. You're forgetting the lady." Nathan's voice dropped to something cold and flat. "She's a better shot than I am." It was a lie, but Beatrice played along, shifting in her saddle to rest her hand on the rifle strapped there. The 3 men exchanged glances, reassessing. "Not worth the trouble," the third man muttered, younger than the others and clearly nervous. Smart thinking. Nathan kept his hand near his gun. "Now ride on." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the scarred man shrugged and reined his horse around. "Plenty of easier targets, but you watch your back, cowboy. Never know when you might find yourself alone." They rode off in a cloud of dust. Nathan waited until they disappeared over the ridge before releasing a long breath. "You all right?" Beatrice realized she was shaking again, but this time from fear rather than exhaustion. "I'm fine. Are they really gone?" "For now, but we need to be careful. We'll take watch tonight, rotating shifts." He studied the trail ahead with narrowed eyes. "We're 3 days from Virginia City. Too far to turn back, too far to outrun trouble if it follows. They made camp early that evening in a defensible position against a rock face. Nathan insisted Beatrice sleep first while he kept watch, his rifle across his knees and his eyes scanning the darkness. When he woke her for her shift 4 hours later, she found him exhausted but alert. "Nothing yet," he said quietly, "but stay sharp. Trust your instincts." Beatrice spent her watch listening to every sound, every rustle of wind through the sage. The horses were restless, sensing her tension. Dawn came as a relief, pink light spilling across the hills and revealing empty land. They pushed hard that day, Nathan clearly eager to put distance between them and the men from the trail. By evening they had crossed into a wider valley and Nathan's shoulders finally relaxed. "We're through the worst of it," he said as they made camp. "From here, the road's more traveled. Those men won't risk jumping us where there are witnesses. You knew they might follow us." Beatrice checked the horses, counting heads to ensure none had strayed. "That's why you pushed so hard today." "I hoped they wouldn't, but hoping and preparing are different things." Nathan started the fire, his movements efficient despite his obvious fatigue. "I won't let anything happen to you, Beatrice, or to these horses. You have my word. I know." And she did. In less than a week, she had come to trust this quiet cowboy with the storm-gray eyes and the gentle hands. "I trust you, Nathan." He looked up at her and the expression on his face stole her breath. "You shouldn't. I'm just a drifter with nothing to my name." "You're more than that." Beatrice crossed to him, cupping his face in her still slightly unsteady hands. "You're the man who saw me struggling and stopped to help. The man who mended my fences and gentled my horses and made me feel like I wasn't alone. That's worth more than gold." Nathan covered her hands with his own. "I'm falling in love with you. Probably have been since I caught you before you hit the ground. That's the truth of it." "Good," Beatrice whispered, "because I'm falling in love with you too." He kissed her then, standing in the firelight with the mountains rising around them and the horses grazing nearby. It felt like a promise, like the beginning of something neither of them had been looking for but both desperately needed. They held each other as the fire burned down, talking quietly about dreams and fears and futures that might be possible. Nathan spoke of always wanting a place of his own, land to work and build on. Beatrice described her vision for the ranch, not just surviving but thriving, breeding the finest horses in Montana. "We could do it together," Nathan said softly. "If you'll have me. After Virginia City, I could stay. Help you build your dream." "Our dream," Beatrice corrected. "If you stay, it becomes our dream." "I like the sound of that." They reached Virginia City on a blazing hot afternoon, dusty and exhausted but triumphant. The town was bustling with miners and merchants, the boom from the silver strike still going strong. Nathan had contacts at the stockyards, men he had worked with on previous drives, and he guided them through the chaotic streets with confidence. The horse auction was held the following morning. Beatrice stood in the ring beside Nathan, presenting each animal and answering questions from potential buyers. The horses were in good condition despite the long drive, a testament to Nathan's careful management. Bidding was brisk. The skittish mare that Nathan had gentled went to a rancher from Helena for a premium price. The others followed, each selling for more than Beatrice had dared hope. When the last horse was sold and the money counted, she stood holding enough to pay off her father's debts with a comfortable margin left over. "You did it," Nathan said quietly, standing beside her in the stockyard office. "The ranch is saved." Beatrice looked down at the money, then up at the man who had made it possible. "We did it. I could not have gotten them here without you." "About my pay," Nathan began, but Beatrice cut him off. "I'll pay you fairly, but I have a different proposition too." Her heart was racing, but the words came easily. Stay, not as hired help, but as a partner. Help me build the ranch into something worth having. Build a life with me. Nathan's expression went very still. Beatrice, I don't have anything to bring to a partnership. No money, no land of my own. You have skills, knowledge, strength, patience. She stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. You have this, that's more than enough. People will talk. A woman taking up with a drifting cowboy, let them talk. Beatrice smiled. I've never cared much for other people's opinions anyway. Nathan caught her hand, pressing it firmly against his chest. She could feel his heart pounding as fast as her own. Yes, he said simply. Yes to all of it. They were married 3 days later by a circuit preacher passing through Virginia City. It was a simple ceremony with 2 minors as witnesses, but when Nathan slipped a plain gold band onto Beatrice's finger, it felt like the most important moment of her life. The return journey to Hecla took 10 days, just the 2 of them with light packs and high spirits. They talked constantly, planning improvements to the ranch, discussing which breeding lines to pursue, imagining the future stretching out before them like the Montana plains. When the ranch came into view, Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. It looked different somehow, not like the burden she had left behind, but like a home she was returning to. Nathan must have sensed her emotion because he reached over and squeezed her hand. Our home now, he said quietly. Our home, she agreed. They worked through the rest of that summer and into fall, transforming the struggling ranch into something sustainable. Nathan repaired everything her father had neglected, his skilled hands making quick work of problems that had seemed insurmountable. Beatrice handled the business side, using the remaining money wisely to purchase 2 quality breeding mares and a strong stallion. They fell into an easy partnership, each complementing the other's strengths. Nathan's calm patience balanced Beatrice's fierce determination. Her business sense grounded his grand ideas. In the evenings, they sat on the porch they had rebuilt together, watching the sun set over the mountains and planning tomorrow's work. Winter came hard and fast, as it always did in Montana. Snow piled deep around the ranch, and the temperature dropped until the water in the bucket froze solid overnight. But the house was tight and warm, the animals sheltered and fed, and Beatrice and Nathan faced it together. On a particularly cold January night, as they lay curled together under heavy quilts, Beatrice spoke into the darkness. I'm pregnant. Nathan went very still beside her. Are you certain? Yes. The baby will come in summer. She could not see his face in the darkness, and fear suddenly gripped her. Are you happy? He rolled to face her, his hand finding her cheek with unerring accuracy. Happy, Beatrice. I'm beyond happy. I'm blessed. A wife I love more than breathing, a home, and now a child. His voice cracked with emotion. A year ago I was alone, drifting, convinced I'd never have any of it. Now I have everything. Beatrice felt tears slip down her cheeks. I was so scared. That first day when you found me, I thought I'd lost everything, but I'd actually found it, found you. We found each other. Nathan kissed her softly. And we'll face whatever comes next the same way we've faced everything else. Together. Their son was born on a blazing August afternoon in 1883, with the doctor from Hecla in attendance and Nathan pacing grooves into the porch boards. When the baby's first cry split the air, Nathan burst through the door, his face white with worry. A healthy boy, the doctor announced, and your wife did beautifully. Nathan crossed to the bed where Beatrice lay exhausted but radiant, holding their son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and lungs like a town crier. Nathan sank to his knees beside the bed, staring at his son with wonder. He's perfect, Nathan whispered. You're perfect. We're calling him Samuel, Beatrice said. After my father. Nathan's eyes went bright with unshed tears. Samuel Stone. It's a good, strong name. Watching her husband hold their son for the first time, Beatrice felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. This family, this life, had come from that moment of desperation when her hands would not stop shaking and a stranger had stopped to help. The years rolled on, marked by the turning seasons and the steady growth of both their family and their ranch. A daughter arrived 2 years after Samuel, red-haired and fierce like her mother. They named her Clara, and she proved to have her father's patience with animals. Another son followed 3 years later, quiet James, who loved books as much as horses. The ranch prospered under their joint management. The Stone Ranch, as it came to be known, gained a reputation for breeding the finest horses in Montana. Buyers came from as far as Wyoming and Dakota Territory, willing to pay premium prices for animals trained with the patient methods Nathan employed. Beatrice's hands still shook sometimes when she was exhausted or stressed. But Nathan was always there, ready to take the burden, to share the load. And she did the same for him. On the days when old sorrows weighed heavy or when the work seemed endless. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised her with a new porch swing he had built himself. They sat on it that evening, watching Samuel, now 9, teaching Clara to rope a fence post while 6-year-old James read aloud to them from his perch on the steps. "You ever regret it?" Beatrice asked quietly. "Stopping that day, giving up your freedom for this life?" Nathan took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Her hands were still marked by work, still capable of trembling when pushed too hard, but they were also strong and sure. "I found my freedom that day," he said. "Found everything I was looking for without knowing I was looking. You gave me a home, Beatrice, a purpose, a family. How could I regret the greatest gift I've ever received? You saved me first. When you took the work from my shaking hands, you saved my life. We saved each other." Nathan pulled her close, kissing her temple. "That's how the best partnerships work." As the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Beatrice Fletcher Stone rested her head on her husband's shoulder and smiled. The ranch was paid off and prosperous. Their children were healthy and happy. The man she loved sat beside her, steady as stone, his hand warm in hers. That moment of desperation, when exhaustion had stolen the strength from her hands and the last of her hope was flickering out, had led her here. To this life. To this love. To this perfect, hard-won happiness. She thought of her father sometimes, wondered if he was watching from wherever spirits went. She hoped he could see what they had built, see that his daughter had not just survived but thrived. That she had found a partner who understood the value of shared burdens and joined dreams. Nathan squeezed her hand, and Beatrice squeezed back, a silent conversation they had perfected over the years. The children's laughter rang out across the yard. Somewhere in the barn, horses whinnied softly as they settled for the night. A cool breeze carried the scent of sage and pine down from the mountains. This was what happiness felt like, Beatrice realized. Not the absence of hardship, but the presence of someone to face it with. Not a life without trembling hands and exhaustion and fear, but a life with someone who would always be there to catch you, to share the load, to remind you that you were strong enough to carry on. Samuel ran up to the porch, breathless and grinning. "Ma, Pa, watch this." He demonstrated the rope trick he had been practicing, managing 3 successful loops before the rope tangled. But his face shone with pride, and Nathan clapped enthusiastically. "Well done, son. Keep practicing and you'll have it perfect in no time." Clara abandoned her own rope and climbed onto the swing between her parents, while James continued reading, his young voice steady and clear. The family sat together as twilight deepened into night, the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Later, After the children were tucked into bed and the house was quiet, Beatrice and Nathan stood together in the doorway of their bedroom, looking out at the ranch they had built together. Moonlight silvered the barn, the fences, the corrals where their horses dozed. "Thank you," Beatrice said softly. "For what?" "For stopping that day. For seeing what I needed when I was too stubborn to ask for help. For loving me enough to stay." Nathan turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face with the same gentle strength he had shown that first day. "I would make the same choice every time. In every possible life I would stop, I would help, I would fall in love with you. It was always going to be you, Beatrice. From the moment I saw your hands shaking and took that bucket, my heart knew it had found home." She kissed him then, deep and slow, tasting 10 years of partnership and passion and devotion. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "Come to bed," Beatrice whispered. "Tomorrow we have horses to train and children to raise and a life to live." "Together," Nathan said, and it was both a statement and a vow. "Always together," Beatrice agreed. They closed the door on the Montana night, on the ranch that was their shared dream made real, on the life they had built from desperation and determination and love. Outside, the wind whispered through the valley. The horses moved quietly in their stalls. The mountains stood eternal watch over the land. And inside the stone house that Nathan had rebuilt with his own hands, the Stone family slept peacefully, safe in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them as they faced everything else. Together. With steady hands and steadier hearts, partners in every sense of the word, bound by a love that had been forged in exhaustion, and sealed with a simple act of kindness from a cowboy who had stopped to help a woman whose hands would not stop shaking. The years continued to pass, each one adding to the legacy they were building. Samuel grew into a fine horseman, with his mother's business sense and his father's gentle way with animals. Clara proved to have a gift for breaking difficult horses, her patience rivaling even Nathan's. James, true to his quiet nature, became the ranch's record keeper, tracking breeding lines and sales with meticulous care. The ranch expanded slowly but surely. Nathan and Beatrice never forgot the lessons learned in those early desperate days, never pushed beyond their means or worked themselves to exhaustion. They hired help when needed, invested wisely, and always made time for each other and their children. On summer evenings, neighbors would gather at the Stone Ranch for dinners that stretched late into the night. Beatrice would watch Nathan across the table, his face weathered by sun and wind and time, still as handsome to her as the day he had caught her before she fell. He would meet her eyes and smile, that rare gentle smile he saved for her, and she would remember how lucky she was. When Samuel turned 18 and announced his intention to marry the daughter of a neighboring rancher, Nathan and Beatrice gave their blessing gladly. The wedding was held at the ranch on a perfect June day with half of Hecla in attendance. Dancing went on until dawn, and as Beatrice watched her son with his new bride, she felt the circle completing itself. "We did well," Nathan said, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of punch. "We did," Beatrice agreed, accepting the glass. "He's a good man. We raised him right. We raised all of them right." Nathan nodded to where Clara was teaching a group of younger children a complicated dance step, and James was deep in conversation with the schoolteacher about books. "They're happy, they're strong. They know how to work and how to love, that's all we can ask." Beatrice leaned into her husband's solid warmth. "Do you ever miss it? The drifting? The freedom to just ride away, not for a single second?" Nathan set down his glass and took hers, placing them both on a nearby table. Then he swept her into the dance, moving with the same quiet grace he brought to everything. "This is freedom, Beatrice. This life we built. this family, this love. Everything before was just waiting to find you. They danced as the sky lightened toward dawn, as their children and grandchildren would one day dance, as the mountains watched over the valley, and the ranch that two desperate people had saved through determination, and partnership, and love. The stone ranch endured through the changing times, through harsh winters and dry summers, through boom and bust. It endured because it was built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared dreams, because two people had learned that asking for help was not weakness but wisdom, because a cowboy had stopped to help a woman whose hands would not stop shaking, and in that simple act of kindness, had changed both their lives forever. Decades later, when Nathan and Beatrice were old and gray, they still sat together on the porch swing he had built for their 10th anniversary. Their hands, both weathered and marked by years of hard work, remained entwined. Sometimes Beatrice's hands still shook when arthritis set in or when the cold bit deep, and Nathan was still there, taking her hands in his, warming them, steadying them, sharing the burden as he had always done. "Tell me the story again," their youngest granddaughter asked one autumn evening, settling at their feet. "Which story, little one?" Beatrice asked, though she already knew. "How you and Grandpa met, how he saved you." Nathan chuckled. "I did not save anyone. Your grandmother did the saving all on her own. I just helped carry some buckets." But Beatrice smiled and began the tale, as she had told it dozens of times before. About a hot summer day in 1882, about hands that would not stop shaking from exhaustion, about a cowboy who stopped to help and ended up staying forever, about how the hardest moments can lead to the greatest blessings, if you are brave enough to accept help when you need it. The granddaughter listened with wide eyes, as children always did, enchanted by the romance of it. But the real romance, Beatrice knew, was not in that first meeting or even in the dangerous drive to Virginia City. The real romance was in every day after, in the steady accumulation of moments shared and burdens divided, and love deepened through the mundane and miraculous alike. As the sun set on another day at the Stone Ranch, Beatrice Fletcher Stone looked at her husband of so many years and felt the same flutter in her heart she had felt when he first kissed her by the fire. Time had weathered them both, had taken its inevitable toll, but the love between them remained as strong and steady as the mountains that ringed their home. "I love you," she said quietly. "I love you too," Nathan replied, his voice rough with age but warm with devotion. "Every day. For all my days." Their granddaughter eventually scampered off to play, leaving them alone with the gathering dusk and the comfortable silence of two people who had said everything important long ago. They sat together, hands linked, watching the lights come on in the barn where their grandson was tending the horses. The ranch would continue after they were gone, passed down through generations who would carry on the work and the legacy. But tonight, they were simply Nathan and Beatrice, the cowboy and the woman with shaking hands, still together after all these years, still in love, still grateful for that moment of desperate need and answering kindness that had brought them together. The stars emerged one by one, ancient and eternal, watching over the ranch as they had watched over that first desperate meeting and every moment since. And under their light, Nathan Stone and Beatrice Fletcher Stone held each other close, two souls who had found in each other everything they had needed and nothing they had expected, bound together by work and partnership, and a love that would endure long after they were gone, written into the very foundation of the land they had tended together for a lifetime. This was their story, this was their life, and it was enough. It was more than enough, it was everything.